Hey everyone, I'm Chris, and in this video I'm going to run you through the initial setup of a NeoFPS project and how to get started. It should be a pretty quick and simple video, but useful just to cover a few of the gotchas you could encounter along the way. So in front of us here we have Unity open in its default layout with a brand new project open. This is Unity 2018.1, as that's the earliest version that NeoFPS currently supports. I've also opened up the NeoFPS Unity package ready for import, as you would see when importing from the asset store. We'll just make sure that all the files are selected and then hit import to get started. Now the import has a few steps, as after the initial file import, it's also going to automatically install the Unity post-processing package. So let's take a step back and let it do its thing. Okay, so everything is imported and the package dependencies have been resolved. At that point, you'll see the NeoFPS welcome pop-up appear. And the first thing that you should notice here is the big warning stating that the settings have changed since last running the wizard. So let's open up the settings wizard and take a look. Now NeoFPS is a pretty complex asset and requires a number of Unity settings changes to function. We'll quickly run through them in a second, but the simplest way to apply all those settings is just to hit the big Apply All Settings button here. Since this is a fresh project, there's no risk to doing that, but if you're importing NeoFPS into an existing project and want a bit more control and visibility over what's happening, then you can use the individual controls just underneath here. These controls cover each of the settings menus that need altering. On the left here you can see the Apply Automatically button. The Apply All Settings button essentially just runs through all of these in sequence. So if you're confident that a specific settings file is okay to change, then you can speed up the process that way. The Apply Manually button will open the specific settings menu for you to inspect and edit yourself, while the Learn More button will take you to the relevant page in the NeoFPS documentation. Here, for example, is a breakdown of the layers NeoFPS uses and the resulting physics layer collision matrix to go with it. The input settings map each of the available gamepad input axes to generic names, so that NeoFPS can use them for gamepad profiles. One of the quirks of Unity is that the axis and button layouts for different controllers aren't consistent across platforms. This is purely a function of those controllers' drivers for each OS, and NeoFPS gets around this by using platform-dependent compilation to map the generic axes that we're applying to the settings here to gamepad profiles as required. The build settings are simply the required scenes and scene load order. This means that scene 0 should be the main menu scene, and after that the other demo scenes can be added in any order. They just need to be included in the build list in order to be accessed from within scripts. Player settings is currently just setting the color space to linear instead of Unity's default gamma setting. Without this, everything will look really washed out and bright. However, be aware that this does also kick off a rebuild of certain assets such as light maps. Anyhow, since this is a fresh project, let's just apply all the settings automatically and come back once that's complete. Okay, so the settings have all been updated and you'll notice that the warnings have disappeared to reflect that. There is one more thing that we need to do though. Earlier I mentioned that NeoFPS uses Unity's post-processing package. Well, currently there's a little bug in there that spams errors to the console if you import it into a project that already references post-processing components. It only requires a restart of the editor to fix, but I figured that a bunch of errors on import would freak most people out, and so I chose to disable the affected components instead. Once Unity have fixed this bug, NeoFPS will be updated so that this step isn't required, and I'll stick a note in the description below. But for the time being, we need to find the relevant objects and re-enable those components now the package is fully imported. First up is the test setup object in samples, single player, prefabs. This is just a simple spawner and scene camera that spawns the demo character as required for testing scenes. We'll select the camera object, and near the bottom here you can see the post-processing layer component is disabled. Re-enable that and this object is sorted. Next up, in the same project folder, is the demo solo character. This has a larger hierarchy, so in Unity versions prior to 2019, we'll need to drop it in a scene to modify it. In 2019 and above, you can just use the nested prefabs feature to explore the prefab and change the settings. So anyway, here we are. Upper body, aimer, player camera root, player camera spring. And as you can see, that's the same component as before. Lastly, there are another two demo characters with a nearly identical layout in samples, single player, scenes, feature demos, inventory. So we'll do the same to those. Upper body, aimer, player camera root, player camera spring, and bosh, there we go. Last one. Cool. With that sorted, we're ready to get started. And the easiest way to do that is with the welcome pop-up we saw earlier. Now that pop-up only appears automatically the first time that NeoFPS is imported. If you want to see it again, you can find it in Tools, NeoFPS, Show Welcome. With the pop-up open, you can also tick the Show Welcome pop-up on Startup setting at the bottom here, and it will then appear each time the project is loaded. So, let's run through the content of the pop-up. The settings wizard we've already seen. Below this is a drop-down for selecting the sample levels included with NeoFPS. Selecting one and hitting Select Scene in Project Hierarchy will highlight the scene asset in the project view. You can also load the scene directly from the pop-up with the Load Demo Scene button. If you're running one of the demo scenes, you can also hit Escape to access the in-game menu. Selecting Main Menu will take you to the main menu scene, and from there you can access the other sample levels from Single Player Select Level. The main menu scene is the default starting scene when you build and run a NeoFPS project. Okay, back to the pop-up, and the other entries provide you with useful links to both the documentation and support. If you do have any problems with NeoFPS, then don't hesitate to let me know, preferably through the support section of the website as linked here. Okay, so looking at the project, all the NeoFPS assets are contained in the NeoFPS folder, which is split into three main sections. Constants is a selection of auto-generated constants that NeoFPS uses in scripts and in the editor, along with the setting file that's used to generate them. Core contains the code for all the central features of NeoFPS. Samples is a selection of scenes, assets, and scripts that implement and demo the various features of NeoFPS for you to experiment with. There's also a template scene in there that you can copy as a basis for testing your own code and assets. And that's about everything you need to know to get started. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, then please get in touch via Twitter using @yondernauts. You can also visit the website at neofps.com for more information. All the links are in the description below. Have fun, and let me know how it goes.